Chapter 93 Judgment Ahkaam. Chapter 1 Obey Allah and obey the Messenger, and those of you who are in authority. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, "Whoever obeys me obeys Allah, and whoever disobeys me disobeys Allah, and whoever obeys the ruler I appoint obeys me, and whoever disobeys him disobeys me." Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger said, "Surely every one of you is a guardian and is responsible for his charges. The Imam ruler of the people is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. A man is the guardian of his family, household, and is responsible for his subjects. A woman is the guardian of her husband's home and of his children, and is responsible for them. And the slave of a man is a guardian of his master's property, and is responsible for it. Surely every one of you is a guardian and responsible for his charges." Chapter 2 The Rulers from the Quraysh. Narrated Muhammad bin Jubair bin Mut'im. That Wali was included in a delegation of Quraysh staying with Muawiyah. Muawiyah heard that Abdullah bin Amr had said that there would be a king from Qatan tribe, whereupon he became very angry. He stood up and, after glorifying and praising Allah as he deserved, said, "To proceed, I have come to know that some of you men are narrating things which are neither in Allah's book nor has been mentioned by Allah's Messenger. Such people are the ignorant among you. Beware of such vain desires that misled those who have them. I have heard Allah's Messenger saying, this matter of the Caliphate will remain with the Quraysh, and none will rebel against them, but Allah will throw down on his face as long as they stick to the rules and regulations of the religion Islam." Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger said, "This matter, Caliphate, will remain with the Quraysh, even if only 2 of them were still existing." Chapter 3 The Reward of Judging According to Al-Hikmah. Narrated Abdullah. Allah's Messenger said, "Do not wish to be like anyone except in 2 cases. 1. A man whom Allah has given wealth and he spends it righteously. 2. A man whom Allah has given wisdom, knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith, and he acts according to it and teaches it to others." Chapter 4 To listen to and obey the Imam. Narrated Anas bin Malik. Allah's Messenger said, "You should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian black slave whose head looks like a raisin." Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "If somebody sees his Muslim ruler doing something he disapproves of, he should be patient, for whoever becomes separate from the Muslim group, even for a span, and then dies, he will die, as those who died in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance as rebellious sinners." See Hadith number 176 and 177. Narrated Abdullah. The Prophet said, a Muslim has to listen to and obey the order of his ruler, whether he likes it or not, as long as his orders involve not one in disobedience to Allah. But if an act of disobedience to Allah is imposed, one should not listen to it or obey it. See Hadith number 203, volume 4. Narrated Ali. The Prophet sent an army unit for some campaign and appointed a man from the Ansar as its commander and ordered the soldiers to obey him during the campaign. He became angry with them and said, "Didn't the Prophet order you to obey me?" They said, "Yes." He said, "I order you to collect wood and make a fire and then throw yourself into it." So they collected wood and made a fire, but when they were about to throw themselves into it, they started looking at each other, and some of them said, "We follow the Prophet to escape from the fire. How should we enter it now?" So while they were in that state, the fire extinguished and their commander's anger abated. The event was mentioned to the Prophet, and he said, if they had entered it, the fire, they would never have come out of it, for obedience is required only in what is good. See Hadith number 629, volume 5. Chapter 5. Allah will surely help him in ruling who? Narrated Abdurrahman bin Samura. The Prophet said, O Abdurrahman, do not seek to be a ruler, for if you are given authority on your demand, then you will be held responsible for it. But if you are given it without asking for it, then you will be helped by Allah in it. If you ever take an oath to do something and later on you find that something else is better, then you should expiate your oath and do what is better. Chapter 6. He who seeks to be a ruler will be held responsible. Narrated Abdurrahman bin Samura. Allah's Messenger said, O Abdurrahman bin Samura, do not seek to be a ruler, for if you are given authority on your demand, you will be held responsible for it. But if you are given it without asking for it, then you will be helped by Allah in it. If you ever take an oath to do something and later on you find that something else is better, then do what is better and make expiation for your oath. Chapter 7. What is disliked regarding the authority of ruling? Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet said, you people will be keen to have the authority of ruling, which will be a thing of regret for you on the day of resurrection. What an excellent wet nurse it is, yet what a bad weaning one it is. Narrated Abu Musa. Two men from my tribe, and I entered upon the Prophet. One of the two men said to the Prophet, O Allah's Messenger, appoint me as a governor. And so did the second. The Prophet said, we do not assign the authority of ruling to those who ask for it, nor to those who are keen to have it. Chapter 8. The ruler not ruling in an honest manner. Narrated Makil. I heard a Prophet saying, any man whom Allah has given the authority of ruling some people and he does not look after them in an honest manner will never feel even the smell of paradise. Narrated Makil. Allah's Messenger said, if any ruler having the authority to rule Muslim subjects dies while he is deceiving them, Allah will forbid paradise for him. Chapter 9. Causing people troubles and difficulties. Narrated Tarif Abi Tamima. I saw Safwan and Jundab and Safwan's companions. When Jundab was advising, they said, "Did you hear something from Allah's messenger?" Jundab said, "I heard him saying, whoever does a good deed in order to show off, Allah will expose his intentions on the day of resurrection before the people, and whoever puts the people into difficulties, Allah will put him into difficulties on the day of resurrection." The people said to Jundab, "Advise us." He said, "The first thing of the human body to purify is the abdomen. So he who can eat nothing but good food, halal and earned lawfully, should do so, and he who does as much as he can that nothing intervene between him and paradise by not shedding even a handful of blood, yet murdering, should do so." Chapter 10. To give judgments and legal opinions on the road. Narrated Anas bin Malik. While the Prophet and I were coming out of the mosque, a man met us outside the gate. The man said, "O Allah's Messenger, when will be the hour?" The Prophet asked him, "What have you prepared for it?" The man became afraid and ashamed and then said, "O Allah's Messenger, I haven't prepared for it much of fasts, prayers and charitable gifts, but I love Allah and His Apostle." The Prophet said, "You will be with the one whom you love." Chapter 11. There was no gatekeeper for the Prophet Sas. Narrated Thabit al-Bunani. Anas bin Malik said to a woman of his family, "Do you know such and such a woman?" She replied, "Yes." He said, "The Prophet passed by her while she was weeping over a grave, and he said to her, 'Be afraid of Allah and be patient.' The woman said to the Prophet, 'Go away from me, for you do not know my calamity.' Anas added, "The Prophet left her and proceeded. A man passed by her and asked her, 'What has Allah's Messenger said to you?' She replied, 'I did not recognize him.' The man said he was Allah's Messenger. Anas added, "So that woman came to the gate of the Prophet, and she did not find a gatekeeper there, and she said, 'O Allah's Messenger, by Allah, I did not recognize you.' The Prophet said, 'No doubt, patience is at the first stroke of a calamity." Chapter 12. A governor can sentence to death a person without consulting the Imam. Narrating Anas. Qais bin Saad was to the Prophet like a chief police officer to an Amir chief. Narrated Abu Musa. That the Prophet sent him and sent Muad after him as rulers to Yemen. Narrated Abu Musa. A man embraced Islam and then reverted back to Judaism. Muad bin Jabal came and saw the man with Abu Musa. Muad asked, "What is wrong with this man?" Abu Musa replied, "He embraced Islam and then reverted back to Judaism." Muad said, "I will not sit down unless you kill him, as it is the verdict of Allah and His Apostle." Chapter 13. Can a judge give a judgment in an angry mood? Narrated Abdurrahman bin Abi Bakra. Abu Bakr wrote to his son, who was in Sijistan, Do not judge between two persons when you are angry. For I heard the Prophet say, a judge should not judge between two persons while he is in an angry mood. Narrated Abu Masud al-Ansari. A man came to Allah's Messenger and said, O Allah's Messenger, by Allah, I failed to attend the morning congregational prayer because so-and-so, Mu'ad bin Jabal, prolongs the prayer when he leads us for it. I had never seen the Prophet more furious in giving advice than he was on that day. He then said, O people, some of you make others dislike good deeds, prayers, etc. So whoever among you leads the people in prayer, he should shorten it, because among them there are the old, the weak, and the busy, needy having some jobs to do. See Hadith number 90, volume 1. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar that he had divorced his wife during her menses. Umar mentioned that to the Prophet. Allah's Apostle became angry and said, he must take her back, his wife, and keep her with him till she becomes clean from her menses, and then to wait till she gets her next period and becomes clean again from it, and only then, if he wants to divorce her, he may do so. Chapter 14. A judge can give judgments for the people according to his knowledge. Narrated Aisha. Hind bint Utbah bin Rabia came and said, O Allah's Messenger, by Allah, there was no family on the surface of the earth I like to see in degradation more than I did your family. But today there is no family on the surface of the earth whom I like to see honored more than yours. Hind added, Abu Sufyan is a miser. Is it sinful of me to feed our children from his property? The Prophet said, there is no blame on you if you feed them thereof in a just and reasonable manner. Chapter 15. To bear witness as to the writer of a stamped letter, and the letter of a ruler to a governor, and of a judge to a judge. Narrated Anas bin Malik. When the Prophet intended to write to the Byzantines, the people said, they do not read a letter unless it is sealed, stamped. Therefore the Prophet took a silver ring, as if I am looking at its glitter now, and its engraving was Muhammad, Apostle of Allah. Chapter 16. When is a man entitled to be a judge? Chapter 17. The salaries of rulers and those employed to administer the funds. Narrated Abdullah bin As-Sadi. That when he went to Umar during his caliphate, Umar said to him, haven't I been told that you do certain jobs for the people, but when you are given payment, you refuse to take it? Abdullah added, I said, yes. Umar said, why do you do so? I said, I have horses and slaves, and I am living in prosperity, and I wish that my payment should be kept as a charitable gift for the Muslims. Umar said, do not do so, for I intended to do the same as you do. Allah's Messenger used to give me gifts, and I used to say to him, give it to a more needy one than me. Once he gave me some money, and I said, give it to a more needy person than me. Whereupon the Prophet said, take it and keep it in your possession, and then give it in charity. Take whatever comes to you of this money, if you are not keen to have it, and not asking for it. Otherwise, if it does not come to you, do not seek to have it yourself. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. I have heard Umar saying, the Prophet used to give me some money, grant, and I would say to him, give it to a more needy one than me. Once he gave me some money, and I said, give it to a more needy one than me. Then the Prophet said to me, take it and keep it in your possession, and then give it in charity. Take whatever comes to you of this money while you are not keen to have it and not asking for it. Take it, but you should not seek to have it. You should not seek to have what you are not given. Chapter 18. Whoever gave judgment of Leon in the mosque. Narrated Sal bin Saad. I witnessed a husband and a wife who were involved in a case of Leon. Then the judgment of divorce was passed. I was 15 years of age at that time. Narrated Sal. The brother of Bani Saida, a man from the Ansar, came to the Prophet and said, if a man finds another man sleeping with his wife, should he kill him? That man and his wife then did Leon in the mosque while I was present. Chapter 19. Passing judgment in the mosque and ordering the punishment outside the mosque. Narrated Abu Huraira. A man came to Allah's Messenger while he was in the mosque and called him, saying, O Allah's Apostle, I have committed illegal sexual intercourse. The Prophet turned his face to the other side, but when the man gave 4 witnesses against himself, the Prophet said to him, are you mad? The man said, no. So the Prophet said to his companions, take him away and stone him to death. Continued from above. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. I was one of those who stoned him at the Musalla in Al-Madinah. See Hadith 5272. Chapter 20. The advice of the Imam to the litigants. Narrated Salama. Allah's Messenger said, I am only a human being, and you people, opponents, come to me with your cases, and it may be that one of you can present this case eloquently in a more convincing way than the other, and I give my verdict according to what I hear. So if ever I judge by error and give the right of a brother to his other brother, then he, the latter, should not take it, for I am giving him only a piece of fire. See Hadith number 638, volume 3. Chapter 21. If a judge has to witness in favor of a litigant. Narrated Abu Qatada. Allah's Messenger said on the day of the Battle of Hunayn, whoever has killed an infidel and has a proof or a witness for it, then the salb, arms and belongings of that deceased will be for him. I stood up to seek a witness to testify that I had killed an infidel, but I could not find any witness, and then sat down. Then I thought that I should mention the case to Allah's Messenger. And when I did so, a man from those who were sitting with him said, the arms of the killed person he has mentioned are with me, so please satisfy him on my behalf. Abu Bakr said, no, he will not give the arms to a bird or Quraysh. and deprive one of Allah's lions of it who fights for the cause of Allah and His apostle, Allah's messenger, I stood up and gave it to me, and I bought a garden with its price, and that was my first property which I owned through the war booty. The people of Hijaz said, a judge should not pass a judgment according to his knowledge, whether he was a witness at the time he was the judge or before that, and if a litigant gives a confession in favor of his opponent in the court. In the opinion of some scholars, the judge should not pass a judgment against him till the latter calls two witnesses to witness his confession, and some people of Iraq said, a judge can pass a judgment according to what he hears or witnesses the litigant's confession in the court itself. But if the confession takes place outside the court, he should not pass the judgment unless two witnesses witness the confession. Some of them said, a judge can pass a judgment depending on his knowledge of the case, as he is trustworthy, and that a witness is required just to reveal the truth. The judge's knowledge is more than the witness. Some said, a judge can judge according to his knowledge, only in cases involving property, but in other cases he cannot. Al-Qasim said, a judge ought not to pass a judgment depending on his knowledge, if other people do not know what he knows, although his knowledge is more than the witness of somebody else, because he might expose himself to suspicion by the Muslims and cause the Muslims to have unreasonable doubt. Narrated Ali bin Hussein, Safiya bint daughter of Huyay came to the Prophet in the mosque, and when she returned home, the Prophet accompanied her. It happened that two men from the Ansar passed by them, and the Prophet called them, saying, she is Safiya. Those two men said, Subhanallah. The Prophet said, Satan circulates in the human body as blood does. Chapter 22. The order of the Wali sending two Amir to one place. Narrated Abu Burda. The Prophet sent my father and Muad bin Jabal to Yemen, and said to them, make things easy for the people, and do not put hurdles in their way, and give them glad tidings, and don't let them have aversion, yet to make people to hate good deeds, and you both should work in cooperation and mutual understanding. Abu Musa said to Allah's Messenger, in our country a special alcoholic drink called al-bit is prepared for drinking. The Prophet said, every intoxicant is prohibited. Chapter 23. The ruler's acceptance of invitation. Narrated Abu Musa. The Prophet said, set free the captives and accept invitations. Chapter 24. The gifts taken by the employees. Narrated Abu Humayd al-Sa'idi. The Prophet appointed a man from the tribe of Bani Asad called Ibn al-Utabiyah to collect the zakat. When he returned with the money, he said to the Prophet, this is for you, and this has been given to me as a gift. The Prophet stood up on the pulpit. Sufyan said he ascended the pulpit, and after glorifying and praising Allah, he said, what is wrong with the employee whom we send to collect zakat from the public, that he returns to say, this is for you, and that is for me? Why didn't he stay at his father's and mother's house to see whether he will be given gifts or not? By him in whose hand my life is, whoever takes anything illegally will bring it on the day of resurrection by carrying it over his neck. If it is a camel, it will be grunting. If it is a cow, it will be mooing. And if it is a sheep, it will be bleating. The prophet then raised both his hands till we saw the whiteness of his armpits, and he said, "No doubt, haven't I conveyed Allah's message?" And he repeated it 3 times. Chapter 25. To appoint the Mawla as judges and officials. Narrated Ibn Umar. Salim, the freed slave of Abu Hudayfa, used to lead in prayer the early Muhajirin, emigrants, and the companions of the Prophet in the Quba mosque. Among those who used to pray behind him were Abu Bakr, Umar, Abu Salama, and Amir bin Rabia. Chapter 26. Urafa appointed to look after the people. Narrated Urwa bin As-Zubair. Marwan bin al-Hakam and al-Miswar bin Makrama told him that when the Muslims were permitted to set free the captives of Hawazin, Allah's messenger said, "I do not know who amongst you has agreed to it and who has not. Go back so that your Urafa may submit your decision to us." So the people returned and their Urafa talked to them, and then came back to Allah's messenger and told him that the people had given their consent happily and permitted their captives to be freed. Chapter 27. Praising the Sultan and saying differently after leaving him. Narrated Muhammad bin Said bin Abdullah bin Umar. Some people said to Ibn Umar, "When we enter upon our rulers, we say in their praise what is contrary to what we say when we leave them." Ibn Umar said, "We used to consider this as hypocrisy." Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's messenger said, "The worst of all mankind is the double-faced one, who comes to some people with one face and to others with another face." Chapter 28. Judgment against an absent person. Narrated Aisha. Hind bint Utbah said to the Prophet, "Abu Sufyan is a miserly man, and I need to take some money of his wealth." The Prophet said, "Miserly. Take reasonably what is sufficient for you and your children." Chapter 29. Whoever is given the right of his brother through a judicial decision. Narrated Salama. The wife of the Prophet, Allah's messenger, heard some people quarreling at the door of his dwelling, so he went out to them and said, "I am only a human being, and litigants with cases of dispute come to me, and someone of you may happen to be more eloquent in presenting his case than the other, whereby I may consider that he is truthful and pass a judgment in his favor. If ever I pass a judgment in favor of somebody whereby he takes a Muslim's right unjustly, then whatever he takes is nothing but a piece of fire, and it is up to him to take or leave." Narrated Aisha. The wife of the Prophet, Utbah bin Abi Waqqas, said to his brother Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, "The son of the slave girl of Sama is from me, so take him into your custody." So in the year of conquest of Mecca, Sa'd took him and said, "This is my brother's son, whom my brother has asked me to take into my custody." Abd bin Sama got up before him and said, "He is my brother, and the son of the slave girl of my father, and was born on my father's bed." So they both submitted their case before Allah's apostle. Sa'd said, "O Allah's messenger, this boy is the son of my brother, and he entrusted him to me." Abd bin Sama said, "This boy is my brother, and the son of the slave girl of my father, and was born on the bed of my father." Allah's messenger said, "The boy is for you, O Abd bin Sama." Then Allah's apostle further said, "The child is for the owner of the bed, and the stone is for the adulterer." He then said to Sauda bint Sama, "Wail, screen yourself before him." When he saw the child's resemblance to Utbah, the boy did not see her again till he met Allah. Chapter 30. Judgment regarding cases invoking wells, etc. Narrated Abdullah. The Prophet said, "If somebody on the demand of a judge takes an oath to grab a Muslim's property and he is a liar in it, he will meet Allah, who will be angry with him." So Allah revealed, "Verily, those who purchase a small gain at the cost of Allah's covenant and their oaths." 377. Al-Ashat came while Abdullah was narrating this to the people. Al-Ashat said, "This verse was revealed regarding me and another man, with whom I had a quarrel about a well. The Prophet said to me, 'Do you have any evidence?' I replied, 'No.' He said, 'Let your opponent take an oath.' I said, 'I am sure he will take a false oath.' Thereupon it was revealed, 'Verily, those who purchase a small gain at the cost of Allah's covenant.' 377. See Hadith number 72, volume 6. Chapter 31. To judge cases involving wealth. Narrated Salama. The Prophet heard the voices of some people quarreling near his gate. So he went to them and said, "I am only a human being and litigants with cases of disputes. Come to me." And maybe one of them presents his case eloquently, in a more convincing and impressive way than the other. And I give my verdict in his favor, thinking he is truthful. So if I give a Muslim's right to another by mistake, then that property is a piece of fire, which is up to him to take it or leave it. See Hadith number 281. Chapter 32. Selling people's estates by the ruler on their behalf. Narrated Jabir. The Prophet came to know that one of his companions had given the promise of freeing his slave after his death. But as he had no other property than that slave, the Prophet sold that slave for 800 dirhams and sent the price to him. Chapter 33. Slanders made by ignorant people against the Amirs. Narrated Ibn Umar. Allah's messenger sent an army unit headed by Usama bin Zayd, and the people criticized his leadership. The Prophet said to the people, "If you are criticizing his leadership now, then you used to criticize his father's leadership before. By Allah, he, Usama's father, deserved the leadership and used to be one of the most beloved persons to me. And now his son, Usama, is one of the most beloved persons to me after him." See Hadith number 745, volume 5. Chapter 34. The most quarrelsome person of the opponents. Narrated Aisha. Allah's messenger said, "The most hated person in the sight of Allah is the most quarrelsome person." Chapter 35. if a judge passes an unjust judgment, narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet sent an army unit under the command of Khalid bin al-Walid to fight against the tribe of Bani Jadhima, and those people could not express themselves by saying Aslamna, but they said Sabana. Khalid kept on killing some of them and taking some others as captives, and he gave our captive to every one of us, and ordered every one of us to kill his captives. I said, by Allah, I shall not kill my captive, and none of my companions shall kill his captive. Then we mentioned that to the Prophet, and he said, O Allah, I am free for what Khalid bin al-Walid has done, and repeated it twice. Chapter 36. The Imam going to establish peace among the people. Narrated Sal bin Sa'd as-Sa'idi. There was some quarrel citing among Bani Amr, and when this news reached the Prophet, he offered a suit prayer and went to establish peace among them. In the meantime, the time of Asr prayer was due. Bilal pronounced the Adhan and then the Iqama for the prayer and requested Abu Bakr to lead the prayer, and Abu Bakr went forward. The Prophet arrived while Abu Bakr was still praying. He entered the rows of praying people till he stood behind Abu Bakr in the first row. The people started clapping, and it was the habit of Abu Bakr that whenever he stood for prayer, he never glanced sideways till he had finished it. But when Abu Bakr observed that the clapping was not coming to an end, he looked and saw the Prophet standing behind him. The Prophet beckoned him to carry on by waving his hand. Abu Bakr stood there for a while, thanking Allah for the saying of the Prophet, and then he retreated, taking his steps backwards. When the Prophet saw that, he went ahead and led the people in prayer. When he finished the prayer, he said, O Abu Bakr, what prevented you from carrying on with the prayer after I beckoned you to do so? Abu Bakr replied, It does not befit the son of Abi Quhafa to lead the Prophet in prayer. Then the Prophet said to the people, If some problem arises during prayers, then the man should say, Subhanallah, and the woman should clap. See Hadith number 652, volume 1. Chapter 37. It is desirable that a scribe should be honest and wise. Narrated Zayd bin Thabit. Abu Bakr sent for me owing to the large number of casualties in the Battle of Al-Yamamah. While Umar was sitting with him, Abu Bakr said to me, Umar has come to my and said, a great number of qaris of the Holy Quran were killed on the day of the Battle of Al-Yamamah, and I am afraid that the casualties among the qaris of the Quran may increase on other battlefields, whereby a large part of the Quran may be lost. Therefore, I consider it advisable that you, Abu Bakr, should have the Quran collected. I said, How dare I do something which Allah's Messenger did not do? Umar said, By Allah, it is something beneficial. Umar kept on pressing me for that till Allah opened my chest for that, for which he had opened the chest of Umar, and I had in that matter the same opinion as Umar had. Abu Bakr then said to me, Zayd, you are a wise young man, and we do not have any suspicion about you, and you used to write the divine inspiration for Allah's Messenger, so you should search for the fragmentary scripts of the Quran and collect it in one book. Zayd further said, By Allah, If Abu Bakr had ordered me to shift a mountain among the mountains from one place to another, it would not have been heavier for me than this ordering me to collect the Quran. Then I said to Umar and Abu Bakr, "How can you do something which Allah's Messenger did not do?" Abu Bakr said, "By Allah, it is something beneficial." Said added, "So he, Abu Bakr, kept on pressing me for that until Allah opened my chest for which he had opened the chests of Abu Bakr and Umar, and I had in that matter the same opinion as theirs. So I started compiling the Quran by collecting it from the leafless stalks of the date palm tree, and from the pieces of leather and hides, and from the stones, and from the chests of men who had memorized the Quran. I found the last verses of Sirat at-Tawbah. Verily, there has come unto you an apostle, Muhammad, from amongst yourselves." 928-129. From Kusaima, or Abi Kusaima, and I added to it the rest of the surah. The manuscripts of the Quran remained with Abu Bakr till Allah took him unto him. Then it remained with Umar till Allah took him unto him, and then with Hafsa bint Umar. Chapter 38. The writing of a letter by the ruler to representatives and by judge to workers. Narrated Abu Layla bin Abdullah bin Abdurrahman bin Sal. Sal bin Abi Hatma and some great men of his tribe said, Abdullah bin Sal and Muhayisa went out to Khaybar as they were struck with poverty and difficult living conditions. Then Muhayisa was informed that Abdullah had been killed and thrown in a pit or a spring. Muhayisa went to the Jews and said, "By Allah, you have killed my companion." The Jews said, "By Allah, we have not killed him." Muhayisa then came back to his people and told them the story. He, his elder brother Huayisa, and Abdurrahman bin Sal came to the Prophet, and he who had been at Khaybar proceeded to speak. But the Prophet said to Muhayisa, the eldest, meaning, "Let the eldest of you speak." So Huayisa spoke first, and then Muhayisa, Allah's messenger, said, The Jews should either pay the blood money of your deceased companion or be ready for war. After that, Allah's messenger wrote a letter to the Jews in that respect, and they wrote that they had not killed him. Then Allah's messenger said to Muhayisa and Abdurrahman, "Can you take an oath by which you will be entitled to take the blood money?" They said, "No." He said to them, "Shall we ask the Jews to take an oath before you?" They replied, "But the Jews are not Muslims." So Allah's apostle gave them 100 she-camels as blood money from himself. Saul added, "When those she-camels were made to enter the house, one of them kicked me with its leg." Chapter 39. To send one man only to manage certain affairs. Narrated Abu Huraira and Said bin Khalid al-Juhani. A Bedouin came and said, "O Allah's Messenger, judge between us according to Allah's book laws." His opponent stood up and said, "He has said the truth, so judge between us according to Allah's laws." The Bedouin said, "My son was a laborer for this man and committed illegal sexual intercourse with his wife. The people said to me, "Your son is to be stoned to death." So I ransomed my son for 100 sheep and a slave girl. Then I asked the religious learned men, and they said to me, "Your son has to receive 100 lashes, plus 1 year of exile." The prophet said, "I shall judge between you according to Allah's book laws. As for the slave girl and the sheep, if it shall be returned to you, and your son shall receive 100 lashes and be exiled for 1 year. O you, Unais," the prophet addressed some man, "go in the morning to the wife of this man and stone her to death." So Unais went to her the next morning and stoned her to death. Chapter 40. The translators of a ruler. Khadija bin Zayd bin Thabit said that Zayd bin Thabit said, "The Prophet ordered me to learn the writing of the Jews. I even wrote letters for the Prophet to the Jews, and also read their letters when they wrote to him." And Umar said in the presence of Ali, Abdurrahman, and Uthman, "What is this woman saying?" The woman was non-Arab. Abdurrahman bin Hatib said, "She is informing you about her companion, who has committed illegal sexual intercourse with her." Abu Jamra said, "I was an interpreter between Ibn Abbas and the people." Some people said, "A ruler should have 2 interpreters." Narrated Abdullah bin Abbas that Abu Sufyan bin Harb told him that Heracles had called him along with the members of a Quraysh caravan, and then said to his interpreter, "Tell them that I want to ask this Abu Sufyan a question, and if he tries to tell me a lie, they should contradict him." Then Abu Sufyan mentioned the whole narration, and said that Heracles said to the interpreter, "Say to him, Abu Sufyan, if what you say is true, then he, the Prophet, will take over the place underneath my 2 feet." Chapter 41. The ruler calling his employees to account. Narrated Abu Humayd al-Sa'idi. The Prophet employed Ibn al-Utbiyah to collect zakat from Bani Sulaym, and when he returned with the money to Allah's Messenger, the Prophet called him to account, and he said, "This amount is for you, and this was given to me as a present." Allah's Messenger said, "Why don't you stay at your father's house or your mother's house to see whether you will be given gifts or not? If you are telling the truth." Then Allah's Messenger stood up and addressed the people, and after glorifying and praising Allah, he said, "Amma Badu. Then after, I employ some men from among you for some job which Allah has placed in my charge. And then one of you comes to me and says, 'This amount is for you, and this is a gift given to me.' Why doesn't he stay at the house of his father or the house of his mother and see whether he will be given gifts or not, if he was telling the truth by Allah? None of you takes anything of it, zakat, for himself," Hisham added unlawfully. "But he will meet Allah on the day of resurrection, carrying it on his neck. I do not want to see any of you carrying a grunting camel, or a mooing cow, or a bleating sheep, on meeting Allah." Then the Prophet raised both his hands till I saw the whiteness of his armpits, and said, "No doubt, haven't I conveyed Allah's message?" Chapter 42. The courtiers and advisors of the Imam. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet said, Allah never sends a prophet or gives the caliphate to a caliph, but that he, the prophet or the caliph, has two groups of advisors, a group advising him to do good and exhorts him to do it, and the other group advising him to do evil and exhorts him to do it. But the protected person against such evil advisors is the one protected by Allah. Chapter 43. How do the people give the bayah to the Imam? Narrated Ubadah bin As-Samit. We gave the oath of allegiance to Allah's Messenger that we would listen to and obey him, both at the time when we were active and at the time when we were tired, and that we should not fight against the ruler or disobey him, and would stand firm for the truth, or say the truth wherever we might be, and in the way of Allah we would not be afraid of the blame of the blamers. See Hadith number 178 and 320. Narrated Anas. The Prophet went out on a cold morning while the Muhajirin emigrants and the Ansar were digging the trench. The Prophet then said, O Allah, the real goodness is the goodness of the hereafter. So please forgive the Ansar and the Muhajirin. They replied, we are those who have given the pledge of allegiance to Muhammad for to observe jihad as long as we remain alive. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Whenever we gave the pledge of allegiance to Allah's Messenger for to listen to and obey, he used to say to us, for as much as you can. Narrated Abdullah bin Dinar. I witnessed Ibn Umar when the people gathered around. Abdul Malik Ibn Umar wrote, I gave the pledge of allegiance that I will listen to and obey Allah's slave, Abdul Malik, chief of the believers, according to Allah's laws and the traditions of his apostle, as much as I can, and my sons too give the same pledge. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. I gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet that I would listen and obey, and he told me to add as much as I can and will give good advice to every Muslim. Narrated Abdullah bin Dinar. When the people took the oath of allegiance to Abdul Malik, Abdullah bin Umar wrote to him, to Allah's slave, Abdul Malik, chief of the believers, I give the pledge of allegiance that I will listen to and obey Allah's slave, Abdul Malik, chief of the believers, according to Allah's laws and the traditions of his apostle, in whatever is within my ability, and my sons too give the same pledge. Narrated Yazid. I said to Salama, for what did you give the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet on the day of Hudaybiyah? He replied, for death. Narrated Al-Miswar bin Makrama. The group of people whom Umar had selected as candidates for the caliphate gathered and consulted each other. Abdur Rahman said to them, I am not going to compete with you in this matter, but if you wish, I would select for you a caliph from among you. So all of them agreed to let Abdur Rahman decide the case. So when the candidates placed the case in the hands of Abdur Rahman, the people went towards him, and nobody followed the rest of the group, nor obeyed any after him. So the people followed Abdur Rahman and consulted him all those nights, till there came the night we gave the oath of allegiance to Uthman. Al-Miswar bin Makrama added, Abdurrahman called on me after a portion of the night had passed and knocked on my door till I got up, and he said to me, I see you have been sleeping. By Allah, during the last 3 nights I have not slept enough. Go and call As-Zubayr and Saad. So I called them for him, and he consulted them, and then called me, saying, Call Ali for me. I called Ali, and he held a private talk with him till very late at night. And then Al got up to leave, having had much hope to be chosen as a caliph. But Abdurrahman was afraid of something concerning Ali. Abdurrahman then said to me, Call Uthman for me. I called him, and he kept on speaking to him privately till the Muaddin put an end to their talk by announcing the Adhan for the Fajr prayer. When the people finished their morning prayer, and that 6 men group gathered near the pulpit, Abdurrahman sent for all the Muhajirin emigrants and the Ansar present there, and sent for the army chief who had performed the Hajj with Umar that year. When all of them had gathered, Abdurrahman said, None has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and added, Now then, O Ali, I have looked at the people's tendencies and noticed that they do not consider anybody equal to Uthman, so you should not incur blame by disagreeing. Then Abdurrahman said to Uthman, I gave the oath of allegiance to you, on condition that you will follow Allah's laws and the traditions of Allah's apostle, and the traditions of the 2 caliphs after him. So Abdurrahman gave the oath of allegiance to him. And so did the people, including the Muhajirin emigrants, and the Ansar, and the chiefs of the army, staff, and all the Muslims. Chapter 44. Whosoever gave the bay'ah twice. Narrated Salama. We gave the oath of allegiance to the Prophet under the tree. He said to me, O Salama, will you not give the oath of allegiance? I replied, O Allah's Messenger, I have already given the oath of allegiance for the first time. He said, Give it again for the second time. Chapter 45. The giving of the bay'ah by the Bedouins. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. A Bedouin gave the pledge of allegiance to Allah's Messenger for Islam, and the Bedouin got a fever, whereupon he said to the Prophet, Cancel my pledge. But the Prophet refused. He came to him again, saying, Cancel my pledge. But the Prophet refused. Then the Bedouin left Medina. Allah's Apostle said, Medina is like a pair of bellows, furnace. It expels its impurities and brightens and clears its good. Chapter 46. The bay'ah of a child. Narrated Abdullah bin Hisham, who was born during the lifetime of the Prophet, that his mother, Zainab bint Humayd, had taken him to Allah's Messenger and said, O Allah's Messenger, take his pledge of allegiance for Islam. The Prophet said, He, Abdullah bin Hisham, is a little child, and passed his hand over his head and invoked Allah for him. Abdullah bin Hisham used to slaughter 1 sheep as a sacrifice on behalf of all his family. Chapter 47. Whoever gave the bay'ah and then cancelled it. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. A Bedouin gave the pledge of allegiance to Allah's Messenger for Islam. Then the Bedouin got fever at Medina, came to Allah's Messenger and said, "O Allah's Messenger, cancel my pledge." But Allah's apostle refused. Then he came to him again and said, "O Allah's Messenger, cancel my pledge." But the Prophet refused. Then he came to him again and said, "O Allah's Messenger, cancel my pledge." But the Prophet refused. The Bedouin finally went out of Medina, whereupon Allah's Messenger said, "Medina is like a pair of bellows, furnace. It expels its impurities and brightens and clears its good." Chapter 48. The person who gives bay'ah just for worldly benefits. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, "There will be 3 types of people whom Allah will neither speak to them on the day of resurrection, nor will purify them from sins, and they will have a painful punishment. They are: 1. A man possessed superfluous water, more than he needs, on a way, and he withholds it from the travelers. 2. A man who gives a pledge of allegiance to an imam ruler and gives it only for worldly benefits. If the imam gives him what he wants, he abides by his pledge, otherwise he does not fulfill his pledge. 3. And a man who sells something to another man after the Asr prayer and swears by Allah a false oath that he has been offered so much for it, whereupon the buyer believes him and buys it, although in fact the seller has not been offered such a price. See Hadith number 838, volume 3. Chapter 49. The bay'ah given by a woman. Narrated Ubadah bin As-Samit. Allah's Messenger said to us while we were in a gathering, "Give me the oath, pledge of allegiance, for 1. Not to join anything in worship along with Allah, 2. Not to steal, 3. Not to commit illegal sexual intercourse, 4. Not to kill your children, 5. Not to accuse an innocent person to spread such an accusation among people, 6. Not to be disobedient when ordered to do good deeds." The Prophet added, "Whoever amongst you fulfill his pledge, his reward will be with Allah, and whoever commits any of those sins and receives the legal punishment in this world for that sin, then that punishment will be an expiation for that sin. And whoever commits any of those sins and Allah does not expose him, then it is up to Allah. If He wishes, He will punish him, or if He wishes, He will forgive him." So we gave the pledge for that. See Hadith number 17, volume 1. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet used to take the pledge of allegiance from the woman by words only after reciting this holy verse 60:12, that they will not associate anything in worship with Allah. 60:12. And the hand of Allah's Messenger did not touch any woman's hand except the hand of that woman his right hand possessed, his captives or his lady slaves. Narrated Atiyah. We gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet, and he recited to me the verse 60:12, that they will not associate anything in worship with Allah. 60:12. And he also prevented us from wailing and lamenting over the dead. A woman from us held her hand out and said, "Such and such a woman cried over a dead person belonging to my family, and I want to compensate her for that crying." The Prophet did not say anything in reply, and she left and returned. None of those women abided by her pledge except Sulaym, al-Ala, and the daughter of Abi Sabra, the wife of Al-Muad, or the daughter of Abi Sabra, and the wife of Muad. Chapter 50. Whoever violates Abaya. Narrated Jabir. A Bedouin came to the Prophet and said, "Please take my pledge of allegiance for Islam." So the Prophet took from him the pledge of allegiance for Islam. He came the next day with a fever and said to the Prophet, "Cancel my pledge." But the Prophet refused, and when the Bedouin went away, the Prophet said, "Medina is like a pair of bellows, furnace. It expels its impurities and brightens and clears its good." Chapter 51. The appointment of a caliph. Narrated Al-Qasim bin Muhammad. Aisha said, "O my head," Allah's Messenger said, "If that, your death should happen while I am still alive, I would ask Allah to forgive you, and would invoke Allah for you." Aisha said, "O my life, which is going to be lost, by Allah, I think that you wish for my death, and if that should happen, then you would be busy enjoying the company of one of your wives in the last part of that day." The Prophet said, "But I should say, O my head, I feel like calling Abu Bakr and his son and appoint the former as my successors, lest people should say something or wish for something. Allah will insist on Abu Bakr becoming a caliph, and the believers will prevent anyone else from claiming the caliphate, or Allah will prevent anyone else from claiming the caliphate, and the believers will insist on Abu Bakr becoming the caliph." Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. It was said to Umar, "Will you appoint your successor?" Umar said, "If I appoint a caliph as my successor, it is true that somebody who was better than I, Abu Bakr, did so, and if I leave the matter undecided, it is true that somebody who was better than I, Allah's Messenger, did so." On this the people praised him. Umar said, "People are of two kinds, either one who is keen to take over the caliphate, or one who is afraid of assuming such a responsibility. I wish I could be free from its responsibility, in that I would receive neither reward nor retribution. I won't bear the burden of the caliphate in my death as I do in my life." Narrated Anas bin Malik, that he heard Umar's second speech he delivered when he sat on the pulpit on the day following the death of the Prophet. Umar recited the Tashahhud, while Abu Bakr was silent. Umar said, "I wish that Allah's Messenger had outlived all of us, had been the last to die. But if Muhammad is dead, Allah nevertheless has kept the light amongst you, from which you can receive the same guidance as Allah guided Muhammad with that. And Abu Bakr is the companion of Allah's Messenger. He is the second of the two in the cave. He is the most entitled person among the Muslims to manage your affairs. Therefore, get up and swear allegiance to him." Some people had already taken the oath of allegiance to him in the shed of Bani Saida, but the oath of allegiance taken by the public was taken at the pulpit. I heard Umar saying to Abu Bakr on that day, "Please ascend the pulpit," and kept on urging him till he ascended the pulpit, whereupon all the people swore allegiance to him. Narrated Jubair bin Mut'im. A woman came to the Prophet and spoke to him about something, and he told her to return to him. She said, "O Allah's Messenger, if I come and do not find you, as if she meant, if you die. The Prophet said, if you should not find me, then go to Abu Bakr. Narrated Tariq bin Shihab. Abu Bakr said to the delegate of Busaka, follow the tails of the camels till Allah shows the caliph successor of his prophet, and all Muhajirin emigrants something because of which you may excuse yourselves. Chapter 51. Narrated Jabir bin Samura. I heard a prophet saying, there will be 12 Muslim rulers who will rule all the Islamic world. He then said a sentence which I did not hear. My father said, all of them, those rulers, will be from Quraysh. Chapter 52. The expulsion of quarrelsome people from houses. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Messenger said, by him in whose hands my life is, I was about to order for collecting firewood, and then order someone to pronounce the Adhan for the prayer, and then order someone to lead the people in prayer, and then I would go from behind and burn the houses of men who did not present themselves for the compulsory congregational prayer. By him in whose hands my life is, if any one of you had known that he would receive a bone covered with meat, or 2 small pieces of meat present in between 2 ribs, he would come for Isha prayer. See Hadith number 617, volume 1. Chapter 53. To forbid the criminals and sinners to talk to or visit the ruler. Narrated Abdullah bin Ka'b bin Malik, who was Ka'b's guide from among his sons when Ka'b became blind. I heard Ka'b bin Malik saying, when some people remained behind and did not join Allah's Messenger in the Battle of Tabuk, and then he described the whole narration and said, Allah's Messenger forbade the Muslims to speak to us, and so I and my companions stayed 50 nights in that state, and then Allah's Messenger announced Allah's acceptance of our repentance.